Right, so Costa Rica 2018. First of all, where is Costa Rica? And you can see that it's in Central America. To the north is Nicaragua, to the south is Panama. The trip that we undertook, starting in San Jose, the capital, which is quite a built-up area, to say the least, down to Tortuguera on the on the north, across over the Great Divide, the mountain range, down to Manuel Antonio and Piedras Blancas, and then back up into the mountains. So first of all, San Jose. The women are obviously quite attractive there, and there's also wild animals out on the street, and this obviously got me into a bit of trouble. But however, let's start at Tortuguera, the national park. As you can see, it is up on the coast, and to get to it, there aren't roads because the locals don't want it to be spoilt, and so you've got a 2-hour journey down by the river. And one of the first sights that we got as we went along a walk at twilight along the beach was some of the baby turtles hatching out. This is possibly a leatherback, and this is actually was difficult to photograph because it was under lights from the helpers. There's no hotels along the beach, so that it's not a distraction for the young turtles. This is only about 2 inches in length, by the way. The red-eyed tree frog, quite nice. Obviously, this was videoed at night time. It's got these suckers on its feet, so it can stick to the branches, and it's got a long sticky tongue, so it can pick up insects and moths and crickets. And when it's startled by such a thing as a snake, it will spread itself wide to show its colours, so it tends to startle the snake itself. During the daytime, on the leaves, it's a green colour, it's flattened, very thin, and so it helps with the camouflage. One of the other frogs we found, blue jeans dart frog, it's called that because of the hindquarters, the blue jeans, and poisonous, used by the natives to put in their darts, and the poison is accumulated in the skin due to the fact that it eats the ants and then stores up the poison. If you leave them in a situation where they're not feeding off the ants, they are no longer poisonous. Horseshoe-shaped bat, this was in the reception area during the daytime, obviously not very active, and they have these noses which help to focus the ultrasound so they can catch the small insects. Going out onto the river, which was adjacent to the beach, the Jesus Christ lizard, up in the trees we went along during the morning, and you can see it's quite well camouflaged, but it's called the Jesus Christ lizard. Obviously the other name is the common basilisk, because, and this is archived, it's got these pads on its feet that can trap air, and so that it can run along the surface of the water. A colleague of mine actually managed to photograph this on a previous occasion. They startled the Jesus Christ lizard, and it ran along the surface, and then it slowly sunk into the water. So this is what he managed to get at the end of its journey. The darter, or the snake bird, quite a nice shot, and this is called a snake bird because it swims under the water, and its neck appears so that it looks a bit like a snake in the water. The collared Aracari toucan is a seed eater, and you'll notice in the next slide, obviously, that it's got the something like a nut in its beak, so it can crack that. There's also a couple of kingfishers, and these basically sit at the side of the river, and they then can fish and pick up fish and also things like frogs, so they'll sit patiently waiting for that. Obviously, in the case of birds, the beak adaptation helps with their feeding, and the boat-billed heron is a sieve feeder, so they can sieve out things like shrimps and small fish when it goes to the water's edge. Spider monkey. It's called the spider monkey because when it hangs up in the trees like this, it almost looks as though it's made a web. And again, it's got a prehensile tail, as a lot of these American monkeys have, so it can use that to hang on to branches and frees up its arms for taking fruit and feeding. So typical of third world monkeys, or new world monkeys, I should say. The next area we went to was the Manuel Antonio National Park, and this is on the Pacific side. As we walked into the park, plenty of vegetation, and Bob, a colleague of mine, managed to get photos which he kindly shared, and this is the fiery-billed Aracari, and it's got a very large beak, so my camera was not functioning too well, so I concentrated on the video shots. And it's a bit of an isthmus, so there's a beach on either side. And one thing we did manage to see was the golden silk orb weaver. And this, in fact, is quite a large spider. Its body is something like 6 inches long, and it produces a thread for the web, which is 6 times the tensile strength of steel. Between the two beaches, you find a mangrove swamp and also a land crab found in this particular area, but it is dependent upon going down to the sea to reproduce. The squirrel monkey, the numbers have been declining, but have started to come back. It's one of the smallest of the monkeys, and it's got quite a long tail, again a prehensile tail. Its main diet is fruit and nuts. Capuchins, mischievous monkeys. You see one ferreting around for food here. Capuchin, because it's got this patch on the head, so it looks a bit like a capuchin monk. Again, these tend to be diurnal, so they're active a lot of the time. You can see in this case the baby is hanging on to the back, and it tends to have a midday nap, but a lot of the day it spends its time searching for food. At night it will sleep up in the trees wedged between branches. It's omnivorous and will even sort of catch frogs, so it's very adept, and other types of vertebrates. And it's mischievous. That was a meal that I'd managed to get for one of the party, and as you see, they actually sort of located that and managed to scoff it down. We were warned as we went into the park to be careful of these, so your rucksack had to be buttoned so that it didn't try and steal your food. The sloths, in a lot of ways, my favourite, and these are related mainly to armadillos, not to monkeys at all. You've got the algae, which grow on the furry coat, and it gives it this reddish, sorry, a greenish tinge, so that it's got this sort of camouflage. The organs in the body, in the abdomen, are adhered to the wall. Otherwise, they would tend to crush the lungs, because it spends about 90% of its time upside down. So its diet are these leaves, which it digests very slowly, and it takes something like 28 days before the leaf is fully digested. It's also got a multi-compartmented stomach that allows it to effectively digest the tough cellulose. They also only come down from the trees once a week to defecate. They are not very adept at moving on the forest floor, and they have to drag themselves along by the forelimbs. And you see this is in fact a three-toed or a three-fingered sloth, and you see that it's able to climb and hang on to the branches very easily. This one again has got a baby, and it will actually look after the baby for something like 9 months. And you see that it's very adept at climbing. You just about see the baby sort of peering out and hanging on to the mother. So they live up high up in the canopy, and you can see obviously they are very adept at climbing. In this case, this one is moving quite slowly. What we're looking at now are two male sloths, and in fact the male here is moving very much quicker than the female was, and the reason for that is that there is a conflict, and over to the left there is in fact another male, and they are moving quite quickly, obviously very agitated, trying to get towards each other. The source of the problem seems to be who is the parent of the child, and this is something like 15 meters up in the tree, so it's actually it's a slow motion fight, but their claws are very sharp. That was a surprise, and in fact they thudded onto the ground but seemed to be relatively unaffected, and they just kept on fighting. The guide himself said he had not seen this in 8 years as a guide, and in fact this continued for something like 15 minutes. I in the end left them to it, but they can do quite a lot of damage to each other by using these very sharp claws. The scarlet macaw, these are up in the tree obviously. The numbers have been going down because people destroyed the habitat and also tended to take them for pets and sell them. The numbers are recovering. We come now to me, the sort of the focus of the trip, and that is the Esquinas Rainforest Lodge. And that again is near the Pacific side. This is a lodge that was founded by Michael Schnitzler, and that is the area we stayed. That is the view from the restaurant, which was inhabited by a caiman, and the person who founded this again was Michael Schnitzler, a world-renowned violinist. This male has got a very sort of distinct mating display, and the woodpecker, obviously this is mainly seed eating. We went for a morning walk, and one of the things that we came across, one of the first things, the caiman. It's one of the smaller animals related to crocodiles. It is a crocodilian, and slightly different to that and alligators due to the head and also the scales. It's out in the morning sun because it's cold-blooded, so it's trying to warm itself up to become active. And then this is supposed to be a sort of a secretive bird, but quite open to being shot by the camera. The male is the black one, and he does as he's told, of course, standing guard while the female feeds on the bananas, and they are mainly fruit eating. The black mandible toucan here at quite a bit of a distance up in the trees. You can see it again feeding off the fruit and pushing its head back. It's got a sort of a very slow undulating flight, and its head tends to move up and down as it's flying along. We then went for a night walk, and this is in the reception area just behind the bar, and these are enhanced, and again it's echolocating with the sonar. Feeds are also off insects. It's about 45 millimeters in length. Tent makers bats, this is at night. It's called a tent maker because it bites through the midriff and then it's able to hide away. And this is during the daytime. Again, these are fairly small and obviously sleeping mainly. That was actually during the daytime, but this is obviously when they are inactive. All the time we had lots of noise from frogs, so different types of frogs. This one's the slim-fingered. And then we have the rain frog, and the female is very much larger than the male. And the reason for that is so that the male can actually get onto the back of the female during amplexus. And as it grabs the female, it stimulates her to lay the eggs. The tungara frog makes a noise. I have turned the sound down so you can't quite hear it so well, but it is quite a racket. And this is only a couple of inches. And it was in the folds of a leaf of a plant. The bullfrog, very much larger. It's a voracious predator, and it will feed off even sort of small mammals. It's the largest of the frogs, and again the next one, the fer-de-lance viper, very poisonous. It will in fact kill you, or I should say venomous, if you don't actually get treated very quickly. It actually keeps the egg inside the body. It doesn't form a placenta. The other thing that I'll lastly include are the stick insects. I think people would like to know that they've probably seen them in school laboratories. They do exist in the wild. The banana forest spider, very venomous, and it will in fact cause death if you don't get the antidote within 2 hours. If we then go on to Michael Schnitzler, and you can see that he is here in this particular environment that he helped to develop. He is a worldwide renowned violinist, also was a conductor of the, or concertmaster of the Vienna Johann Strauss Orchestra, and he is also a conservationist. So he started the development of the rainforest of the Austrians, and this started in 1991 and has continued apace since. And the idea is to reforest areas where the trees have been removed in the past. So he managed to raise $4 million for this, and he's managed to keep this going. So we'll just show you a short video of this.
The 56 square mile Esquinas Rainforest, known today as Piedras Blancas National Park, is part of a biological corridor around the Golfo Dulce, connecting Corcovado National Park with the Golfito Wildlife Refuge. Until 1991, it was the last unprotected tropical forest on the Pacific coast of Costa Rica. In 1991, the Costa Rican government declared the area as Piedras Blancas National Park, but it remained a so-called paper park because there were no funds to purchase the land. Park Director Álvaro Ugalde asked me whether I could find help in Austria, and the same year I founded the non-profit organization Rainforest of the Austrians. My goal was to raise money to purchase properties and then donate them to the Costa Rican government. No one was expropriated. Each landowner sold his property voluntarily for a fair price that was specified by the government. Other NGOs and the Republic of Costa Rica itself joined our campaign and also purchased land within the Esquinas forest. In 25 years, thousands of Austrians, including children from over 300 schools, donated more than $4 million and enabled us to save 10,000 acres of rainforest. By the end of 2016, 72% of the Esquinas forest had been saved, of which 10,000 acres have been purchased with donations from Austria. Logging permits are no longer issued. Since the forest is no longer in danger, we are concentrating our efforts on buying land in the biological corridor outside the national park. One day I might be playing a concert with the Haydn Trio in Europe, and 2 days later I might be in a discussion with park authorities in Costa Rica. I negotiate contracts with loggers and notaries. I visit illegal gold miners and park wardens. I argue with hunters, and I often meet with other NGOs, lawyers, and sometimes even ministers. To protect the national park, park rangers are required to confiscate illegally felled trees and chase poachers. Since 2003, Rainforest of the Austrians has been paying the salaries for 2 park rangers, and in 2008 we funded the construction of a ranger station in La Gamba. Today, 16 rangers patrol the national park, and illegal hunting has decreased. But also hundreds of other confiscated or orphaned animals have been released, including endangered species like squirrel monkeys or ocelots. In 2011, the evaluation of a camera trap near Esquinas Rainforest Lodge resulted in a big surprise. For the first time, a jaguar and a tapir were photographed on one of our trails. By selling endangered species certificates and paying the salaries of park rangers, we have raised and donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to protect the wildlife of the Esquinas Rainforest. In 1993, the same year as the founding of the research station, Esquinas Rainforest Lodge was constructed on a level piece of pasture land at the end of La Gamba Valley and surrounded by Piedras Blancas National Park. The Austrian government had commissioned Rainforest of the Austrians to administrate an ecotourism project in La Gamba, with the idea of creating new jobs, bettering the living standard of the local people, and offering a new source of income as an alternative to logging. Esquinas Lodge was opened in 1994. By planting thousands of trees as part of La Gamba Tropical Station's reforestation project, we have been certified as a carbon-neutral hotel. La Gamba, a village of around 400 inhabitants, is surrounded by nature reserves. Unemployment is high and the standard of living is low. There is a problem with crime, drug abuse, and poaching. Esquinas Lodge and the biological station are the largest employers in La Gamba. Support for the village is one of our most important objectives. School children visit Esquinas Lodge, biologists from the biological station give lectures for the children, guests from Austria donate school equipment. All the buildings marked in red and white were made possible by donations from Austria. Each hectare of tropical rainforest captures 600 tons of carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere. During its lifetime, every single tree binds 750 kilograms of the dangerous greenhouse gas. In 2009, and as a contribution to the fight against global warming, Rainforest of the Austrians and La Gamba Biological Station began with the reforestation of pasture land in and around La Gamba. Seedlings from the surrounding forest are grown in greenhouses, and volunteers from Austria and La Gamba bring them to the land previously purchased by Rainforest of the Austrians, where they are planted. This meadow was planted with thousands of trees in 2009, and only 1 year later, a young forest had appeared. In 1997, the countries of Central America and international organizations began an ambitious project to connect 600 nature reserves and create a so-called biological corridor, all the way from Mexico to Panama. In Costa Rica, the Mesoamerican biological corridor is split into two parts. One runs along the coastline and the other through the high mountains. From La Gamba, one can see up to the 5,000-foot-high forested mountain ridge called Fila Cruces, which is part of the Mesoamerican corridor. The Fila Cruces is still covered with dense, untouched, but also unprotected forest. This is the watershed of many rivers, including the Rio Esquinas, which flows down to the Golfo Dulce and forms the northern border of the Rainforest of the Austrians. The view from the Fila Cruces stretches over Piedras Blancas National Park to the Golfo Dulce and the Osa Peninsula. These mountain forests and the coastal forests used to be connected with each other, but now the corridor is interrupted by farmland and pastures, and the remaining forests are in danger. La Gamba Research Station and Rainforest of the Austrians have made it their goal to create a biological corridor by purchasing land and planting trees. And in the ensuing years, 11,000 trees from over 100 species were planted. After only 2 years, a young forest had appeared, and by 2014, the rainforest was so dense that it was nearly impossible to walk through. Since, rare animals such as ocelots and pumas have been sighted on Finca Amable. From 2009 to 2016, we have invested over $1 million in land purchase and reforestation in the biological corridor, also known as COBIGA. By planting thousands of trees, a new rainforest was created, capturing thousands of tons of carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere and providing a shelter to endangered animals. In order to continue these projects, we must rely on donations, and we are deeply grateful for any support.
Okay, so that is the PayPal address to which I've sent quite a few donations. And some of those were actually as a result of doing this talk in New Zealand to Rotary foundations, and also managed to sell some certificates, which obviously helps to add to the money which is sent. What they were doing last time I talked to Michael was looking to raise another $800,000 for the purchase of about 130 hectares of grazing. It was areas that had been deforested, logged, and they were looking to reforest that. So the value of this is threefold. First of all, obviously the carbon capture. Secondly, the restoration of habitat. But very importantly, the corridors that he mentioned enable the animals to migrate. So if you don't have the corridors, they are stuck in one place. They could become extinct in that particular area. And also you've got a problem with the sort of the inbreeding. So the reforestation continues and is looking to continue to purchase land. The current situation, though, the donations have gone down. He's managed to get some larger companies involved in some sponsorship, but the Esquinas lodge that he helped to found was, last time I was in contact with him, in a bit of crisis, because it is reliant upon ecotourism, no guests, so very little income, and it still means that they've got to pay salaries, pay tax and insurance and other things like that. So much so have been the problems that he's had to look at using his own personal finances to keep it going. So quite a bit of a problem. And obviously this has been all over Costa Rica. So a lot of the lodges with the COVID situation have not been occupied and are struggling to survive. This then is the sort of the Great Divide, this mountain range that goes across the country. And the next part of the journey is up into this area, and this is to Monteverde, which is about 4,700 feet. It's called a rainforest because it's up in the clouds, or a cloud forest, I should say. And it means that at these high altitudes, very often it can be a bit cooler. There's the covering of cloud a lot of the time, and it is in fact a sort of a bit of a rainforest as well, as I mentioned. So a lot of cloud cover. That gives you an idea where Monteverde is, north of where we were before at Esquinas, and quite a bit of rainfall, so quite a nice rainbow, which Bob managed to capture, and this is the view of the lodge. And one of the animals we saw there was the coati. And this is in fact probably a naughty boy. It's isolated. It's been kicked out from the family, left to its own devices. And then the agouti is in fact almost like a guinea pig. You can see I managed to creep up behind some sort of bushes and managed to get it while it was feeding off a nut there. So typical of what it feeds off. Then we have the howler monkeys, and these are so called, as you'll now see, because they make this racket. Very often they can keep you awake at night. Howler monkeys feeding. And you can see obviously it's got a baby there, so it's feeding away on the leaves in this case, and it's totally unfazed by the traffic that's going past. It's something like 22 to 36 inches in size, and that excludes the tail, which can be equally as long. And again, it is a sort of it's got a prehensile tail. The mot was something that Bob was very pleased to able to photograph, and it's got this pendulous tail, and again it's the male that's really the sort of more striking with regards to the colours, and it swings this tail side to side to attract the attention of the female. Finishing off, one of the reasons that I went to Costa Rica was to see the hummingbird. Fantastic animals. They produce this humming sound because they've got the beating of the wing. This can be between 12 and 80 beats per second. And during flight, it's got a huge oxygen consumption of 10 times that of a human athlete. And the heart rate can be 1,260 beats per minute. It's breathing rate 250 per minute. The stamina is fantastic for some of these. The ruby-throated hummingbird can cross the Gulf of Mexico, which is 500 miles non-stop, using the fat that it had built up in the body as a fuel reserve. It's also very sensitive to stimuli around it. It can maneuver and hover, fly backwards. So it's got a very well-developed brain for this particular area. The other peculiar thing about them is they are found usually at altitude, 3,000 feet and above. So they're obviously well adapted to this particular environment. Anyway, I'll leave you with a compilation. A lot of these are in fact photographed by Bob, and I've put this to music.
Follow the night, can't stand the light. When will I begin to live again? One day I'll fly away, leave all this to yesterday. What more could your love do for me? When will love be through with me? Why live life from dream to dream and dread the day when dreaming
So if anybody does want to contribute further, what I did in New Zealand was send certificates. People can purchase a metre, square metre of land for £5. All of that goes directly over to Esquinas. The other thing that I did manage to get when I was over there, just to show you, I did get a bit of a souvenir. So, okay, thanks very much for listening.